All right. On this part of the Garlic Marketing Show book marketing series, we're going to talk something really, really cool, something different, which you have to be different. We're going to talk using NFTs to market and to increase your income streams. I've got Kary Oberbrunner. We're going to talk about preventing buyer whiplash, 18 streams of income, including the 4 income streams every author should have. The secret of the bounty link in the audiobook, Dave Goggins' audiobook strategy that he's using right now. The value of a co-narrator in Audible. Should you read your audiobook yourself? How to earn a PhD through Audible, and funding your book through NFTs. Just how to think about NFTs. I got Kary. Kary, thank you so much for being on.
Hey man, thanks. That was like the best intro, and I can't wait to learn with everybody on all this fantastic stuff.
And don't forget, this is brought to you by videocasestory.com. One of the best ways to improve your book is through customer stories, and we can increase, not only help you capture those videos of your customer stories, strategize around them using your books and throughout your marketing. Go to videocasestory.com to learn more. All right, let's get started. And Kary is doing a lot of cool stuff around helping authors add sources of income through their book, around publishing the books, but also we're going to talk about NFTs, because I think this is one of those things that people, right now as we're shooting this, it's in the dip. And it's like, I think every big thing, it gets a dip before it becomes a big thing, right? Amazon, you look at tech dip, and I want to talk all about that. But Kary, let's talk a little bit about you and your business first.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Wisconsin. Now I live in Ohio. Basically, I was a nonprofit leader. So I worked in the church, believe it or not. And the church was great, fantastic, but it felt claustrophobic a little bit because I'm hardwired to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know that. But I started writing books on the side starting in 2003, so almost 20 years. And I just wrote book 1, 2, 3, 4, and then kept thinking, gee, when is this gonna land so I can, do what I love full time? But it didn't land. And the reason why is because I didn't think of a book as an integrated product suite. And maybe that's the first aha for people today. Apple is one of the most valuable brands on planet Earth because they create an integrated product suite. AirPods, iPhone, iPad, MacBook Pro, they all work together. And so what I began to do is I started to treat my author career, my book, as an integrated product suite. So when I wrote my 4th book, I said, you know what, I'm going to someday speak on this, so I might as well write the book as if I were speaking a keynote. So I did that. And then I wrote the book with a course in mind, and with a membership community in mind, and with a workshop in mind. And so what I actually did, without trying intentionally, I wasn't that smart, but I said, you know what, at the end of the day, look, I created 18 streams of income. And as I did that, people began to take notice and say, well, how did you do that? And not being a business major, I'm like, it's complex. And I just did my own thing for about 3-4 years. And then finally, after, I don't know, the 55th person asked me, I'm like, you know what, there's probably something here. So then I actually began to teach how to do that. And sure enough, people ate it up. And that's kind of what my publishing brand is now these days.
Oh, I love it. And, it is. And we have to think of everything holistically. But because I think people think of things tactically, like I'm going to go write a book, and then I'm going to do a podcast, and then I'm going to, do this, and I'm going to do that. And they keep them all separate. Do you see that a lot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, well, I just spoke with a woman today on the phone, and she's like, yeah, my book's coming out, and I think I'm going to do a master class, and then I think I'm going to do a course. And that's not bad, but that's like saying, let's buy a house, and then maybe over the next 10 years we'll build a addition and a pool and a driveway. What if you actually came into the equation saying, you know what, I'm going to build this pretty cool integrated product suite, or I'm going to build an empire, whatever you want to call it, but I'm going to build it with that in mind. You end up saving a ton of time, a ton of money. Your audience doesn't get whiplash because they're not like, oh, here's the next stream of income. Oh, wait, here's another one. Instead, you actually begin to create what's called a buyer's journey, where people just like very few people just buy a MacBook, desktop. Usually, what they do is they are familiar with iTunes. And then they say, oh, this is pretty cool how it's keeping track of all my songs. I wonder if I could, organize them on my iPhone. And what happens is the buyer's journey is where your audience begins to know, like, and trust you. And if you know where you're pointing them, they don't feel like they're just going on a walk with you.
Yes. Yeah. And it's that intention is super important. And that's why, I want to do this series, because I think there's a lack of attention in a lot of this, that people are like, well, I'm going to do it step by step instead of integrating it. Plus, I feel like, you probably know this better, but it's a lot more work to do it step by step than thinking about it all at once, isn't it?
Yeah, look at Disney. This just popped in my head. Maybe it's a good example, maybe not, but you have Disney, and Disney bought a plot of land, and then they added on, and then they added on again, and then imagine if Disney would have been able to say, you know what, someday we're going to do all these parks and all these themes. Now, it's not easy to think that way, but when you do think that way, you think, oh my gosh, we could connect the train, or the whatever you call it, I don't know, the monorail, whatever. We could connect it strategically versus now we got to bulldoze this and that. I think that this is the way we want to go. And because other people have gone before, authors today can say, you know what, that's what I want to achieve someday. I don't need to do all 18 at the same time, but I know where I'm headed. And as a result, incredible things can happen.
So we keep talking about the 18 streams of income.
Yep.
What are they?
Yeah. So I'll blow people's minds maybe with one stream of income that I'll tell you what it is first, then I'll explain how it happened. Um, I took a mastermind to Shawshank Prison, and we did a book-based experience. Now you might say, how the heck did you do that? Well, I wrote Day Job to Dream Job. And as I was writing that book, I said, you know what? Day job is like a Shawshank. It's like prison. And people become institutionalized. 86% of the population wants to leave their jobs, but they stay. Why? Because of the benefits. And then I began to say, you know what? What if we wrote a book called Day Job to Dream Job? Dream job is your Zihuatanejo. Your day job is your Shawshank. And you go from prison to plan to payoff. So I'm not from Ohio, so I Googled where Shawshank was, and sure enough, it was 90 minutes from my house. So in the writing process, I said, I'm going to go up there. I don't know anybody, but I'm going to figure out if I can write the book in Andy's cell. And sure enough, I went to the gift shop, explained that I was a writer, asked if I could go into Andy's cell and write the book, and sure enough, they let me. And as a result, yeah, it's a pretty crazy story. And as a result, then I befriended them, and they asked me what I was doing, and I said I want to launch this a year from now. They said, "Oh my gosh, come back! We're having the 20th reunion, so why don't you launch the book at the 20th reunion with the celebrities?" And so I launched the book with the warden, Bob Gutton from Shawshank Redemption, and it then spun into a keynote. It spun into a membership community, a mastermind. These are the things that happen. Of course, the first four income streams most authors should do. It's just hardcover, softcover, paperback. I'm sorry, hardcover, softcover, ebook, and audio. But a lot of authors don't leverage the audiobook. They don't realize that their audiobook produces a bounty link that they can include at the bottom of their email signature, that when they send out 200 emails a week, it can say, hey, enjoy my free audiobook when you start a Audible subscription. Well, that bounty link, when you click it, if people stay 61 days in that Audible subscription, you earn a $70 bounty. So you can imagine that if you do that 10 times, that's $700, 100 times $7,000. These are the types of things that we teach our authors. It's the low-hanging fruit that most authors don't even recognize that they can do.
Love it. And I think, yeah, I definitely think audiobooks are such a marketing. I mean, I think a lot of authors know that, but it's such a marketing misused, underused piece of any business.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah, one thing we're doing right now, I mean, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, made this famous, but what he did is he basically had his narrator interview him at the end of each chapter. And I highly recommend this because Gary Vee's done it, David Sinclair has done it with Lifespan. I've done it with my authors where Justin Donald, Lifestyle Investor, or Lee Benson, Your Most Important Number, or even Katrina Ubell, one of my authors that is releasing next month. What I do with them is I basically interview them, and as a result, there's a couple cool things that happen. One is that there's fresh content. So when your true fans hear about that, they say, "Oh my gosh, I want David Goggins hardcover, but I also want his audiobook because I'm going to get fresh content." The other cool thing is that when you have the right co-narrator, they can edify you in a non-salesy way, but they can essentially drop other ways that people can experience you. So for example, David Sinclair, his interviewer talks about their community. Or with Justin Donald, we talk about his mastermind or his masterclass. So these are, again, non-salesy ways where as an author, you don't want to be like, hey, I have this other thing and you should do this. But when you have the right co-narrator, they can really create value and tease it out and provide other pathways for the reader to experience. Audiobooks are also super hot because, of course, you can listen to them while you're doing other things. So Brian Tracy, Darren Hardy, Jim Rohn, they all talked about something called a mobile university, where they've done the research and the average person commutes enough that after 3 years, if they were listening to audio content, they could earn a PhD in that material. So although I've never done a master's in business, I have done a master's in divinity and a doctorate in leadership, but I've earned many doctorates when you consider the audiobooks that I listen to. And then people say, how can you retain that? Well, there's a really cool secret that a lot of people don't know, but when you have your iPhone, if you have an iPhone, you can have your notes app open. And so what you do is, I'm just listening to the audiobook and mowing the lawn or unloading the dishes, and then something amazing gets shared, and I open my notes, I hit the microphone, I talk the note into my notes, and then once I hold my finger off the microphone, the audiobook continues. So that's a great way to research and retain more content with an audiobook.
I love it. I love it. And so once you get, once you have an audiobook, I want to ask you this. What's your opinion? Do you feel like someone should read their own audiobook or should they get a narrator?
I think you should read it yourself unless it's fiction. So I have a book called Elixir Project that has like 27 voices, and it's a very cool book about a future society where people's brains get hacked. And there was no way I was going to read that because there's Spanish, Australian, female, male. So what I did is I hired, believe it or not, I think the video game is it called Five Nights at Freddy's, something like that. But the one who is the baby character, her name's Heather Masters, and so she's a famous actress, and I basically hired her to read my audiobook, and she does a great job, and it's so much better than I could. But for nonfiction, absolutely. I mean, I just was on the phone with a client today, and unfortunately, his narrator mispronounced his business name throughout the entire audiobook. And so, I mean, you can imagine, oh yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. And so, they're not going to get the inflections right. They're not going to get the passion, the stories. I think people would rather have someone be authentic and less professional than someone who's perfect but gets it all wrong. I think David Goggins is probably yeah, David Goggins is probably the exception. Where if you really can't read it, fine, have somebody interview you at the end of each chapter, and at least they're getting your feel then.
Well, and also, I mean, there's just that mere exposure effect of, I know I've heard, like I've listened to Malcolm Gladwell and Seth Godin so many times. I feel like I know them.
Yes. Yes. Well, and you nailed it. I'll tell you what, because if you're going to have other product income streams, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And when you can spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours whispering in someone's ear, you've already built rapport. And you're right, people feel like they know you. And so then investing in their conference or their experience doesn't seem that crazy. But if you do have some professional narrator and you don't have that human connection, then it does feel awkward when you see them in person. You're like, yeah, this isn't the author that I know.
I know, and it's funny because I feel like I've had a few of the narrators on, and I feel like I know the narrators better than I know some of the authors because there's the same narrator over and over again. And you're like, oh, I know your voice.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Well, and I know that we chatted pre-show about NFTs, but non-fungible tokens, often that term causes people to do a double take or reject what we're saying, or they think, oh, that's a JPEG, that's overpriced. Really, maybe this is the first time ever anyone's heard this. When you're an author and you create an ebook or an audiobook, that's a digital asset. So technically, you've already created an NFT. Now, it's not one of one, but you have created a digital asset. So to then turn it into a non-fungible token, which is just simply a one of one, is not that much of a stretch. They've already created digital assets. Now what they're doing is they're essentially making them more unique. And as a result, there's a limited amount, and some of those NFTs can unlock certain benefits. Gary Vee, of course, made VeeFriends famous by saying, I'm going to create VeeFriends that have then different off-chain benefits. Some of these off-chain benefits could be, let's go bowling with Gary, or let's have a consulting session. But some of them also said, hey, let's unlock VeeCon, a conference that you can then gain admission to by being an NFT holder 3 years in a row. If you don't want the second or third year, you can sell it. And Gary will make 10% royalty off the secondary market, and the NFT holder will. So this is very advantageous for authors who recognize that they're going to be in this thing for a while. They could create incredible benefits. Like for you, let's say you did a book. You might say, look, I'm going to issue 5. And if we issue 5, they're going to be expensive, but you get a slot on my podcast where you're going to be featured. And that podcast is going to reach a ton of people. And as a result, you now sold your book not for $9.99, but maybe $10,000 because it's great marketing and you've built a tribe and a following and a listenership. So yeah, this is exciting when people start realizing that NFTs are simply a container that holds other income streams with it.
I think that's absolutely crucial for people to understand NFTs because if you look at it as just the Bored Ape thing and
Right.
all that, and I think that's where people they see a graphic, they're like, I don't get it. But if you think of
Right.
it as a container of value and
Yep.
the whole non-fungible, you can't fake this, you can't replicate it because I could say this is a first edition of a book, and there's a 50% chance that it might be a complete fake.
Absolutely.
Whereas a non-fungible token is 100% real.
Absolutely.
And it's 100%, and it's digital. And if you look at the people, the sub-millennials, the younger than millennials, digital is just as much a value to them as a real thing. My son's buying stuff in Roblox, and it's real value to him.
Absolutely. My son's on Fortnite. And yeah, and here's what I want, the Gen Xers or boomers or millennials to realize. We used to flex by driving a vehicle up to a party, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, check out my convertible or something. And people would be like, wow, that's social currency. Today, because of COVID, you're driving up digitally to a gathering or a meetup, and you have a digital flex option. In addition to that, there's also this nostalgic piece too, where back in the day, let's just say Nirvana was our go-to. Well, imagine the fact that if Nirvana said, "Look, we're a young band, we're brand new, we're gonna issue NFTs, and the way that we're gonna pay for this album recording is by selling NFTs, and everyone who is a original owner of the NFT is going to get after party. They're going to get front row seats. They're going to get T-shirts. They're going to get whatever, you name it. They're going to get the opportunity to go to Europe with us. Who knows? The point is that you become a owner. So that's really interesting. That NFTs have allowed us to become owners. I mean, I bought baseball cards in the day. It didn't mean that I owned Mickey Mantle, you know? But imagine if that NFT would have said like, oh, you can go to Mickey Mantle's house and have a barbecue with him. Or you can go to his estate after he passes. Now all of a sudden it makes really cool sense. And now you want to be one of these early founders. Not only that, because of a smart contract, you now have this ability for bragging rights where you can say like, hey, I liked Nirvana before it was even popular. And I was one of the original 200. So in my town we have the 21 Pilots. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. But 21 Pilots is Grammy Award winners. My kids go to the same school they went to. I actually published the mom's book, Kelly Joseph, Tyler's mom. The point is this, like, there's some flex around Columbus, Ohio, when you say, I was one of the original 100 that saw them in the basement before they played at the Grammys. And now all of a sudden, the fact that you're an original NFT holder, you could be earning perpetual rights for the rest of your life when you create an NFT. So your descendants can earn 10% forever and ever and ever that simply go into your digital wallet anytime it's passed through a sale. So yeah, this is pretty powerful stuff.
You know, and it's amazing from an income standpoint. But right now, I think it's a huge opportunity from a marketing standpoint because you're creating an experience with your book, aren't you?
Yes.
And you're something different. And what do you see happening when someone purchases the NFT? Because I feel like if someone does at that level in that book, they're much more invested in the book. And then and then there's that whole idea of continuity of consistency. Is the word I was looking for, of consistency. It's like, hey, I just spent $20,000 to be around this author because of this NFT. Let me talk more about it.
So let's take the movie for example, Twilight, which years ago, but let's just say when that was at the height, if you could have purchased an NFT and then Stephanie Meyer sold those, and as a result, the NFT holder could shape the plot in the book, or could have written in a character with their own name. Suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, this this has become now memorialized. I mean, imagine if you could have had your name written in the Harry Potter series as one of Harry's friends. Why? Because you purchased an NFT, which it sounds maybe like gimmicky or marketing, but you know what? Go back to Picasso, go back to I'm talking like way long ago, where Raphael and
Oh, the
Michelangelo.
Renaissance.
Oh yeah,
Yep,
the patrons. I mean,
exactly.
this is what the patrons were doing, where they would sell their talent for wealthy families. Why? Because they needed to fund their craft. Well, today authors can fund their craft by creating additional values for their readers. So if you're Stephanie Meyer and you're like, hey, I want to go to Scotland and, let's see the backdrop of Twilight. And I'm not saying Twilight was in Scotland because I don't even know that series, but you know what I'm saying? Like you could actually go travel with her. And here's the other thing. She might teach you a fiction class. Okay. So, why, my conference, the Igniting Souls conference, we're actually issuing NFTs as one way of purchasing a ticket. And you can get a bonus class that is pre-con. It's called the pre-con workshop, where we teach you digital wallets, crypto, and minting. So I think to answer your question, we have to onboard our audience. I can't just say, hey, listen, audience, you don't know anything about NFTs, but now you better learn, and they're not going to get it. And so what I've been doing is I've purposely said I'm gonna create 30 episodes of blockchain content because I care about my audience so much. So that now and then I wrote a book on blockchain that comes out in October. Like, I'm basically saying, look, audience, it's my responsibility to educate you and to bring you up to Web 3 from Web 2. And you bet they're going to be honored and rewarded. And by the way, some left me. So some said you're a nut. So I don't want people to think this is like super romantic. There's some people that said, Kary's crazy. I'm jumping. Well, that's fine. But then 6 months from now, when they suddenly say, you know what? The Golden State Warriors created NFTs that build in value for each game that they win in the championship. Maybe there's something to this. Oh, there's a fish restaurant where you only get in if you own an NFT. Okay. So what I'm saying is that we're moving this way as a world, and the early adopters will always be the early adopters, and the late bloomers will always be the late bloomers. But I've chosen to say, I'm going to be at cutting edge, take some hits, and bring my audience into this because I actually care about them. I think that it's a shame for me as a publisher to not be trailblazing with this technology.
I love it. Yeah, and it shows. It engages people. It shows. And I think there's a side thing that we haven't even talked about that's really just pretty obvious, but we're not. Is that digital books? I mean, we're buying physical books, but digital books are becoming more and more a thing. I don't. I buy very few physical books, but there is that souvenir that having an original version, and you really couldn't have an edition 1 of Kary's NFT book. No. I mean, you can have it, but it's not officially edition 1. But you can have that now, and you come up with multiple editions down the road, and you can have multiple NFTs that put it out, can't you?
There's a guy named Matthew Ball who just came out with a book on the metaverse. If Matthew Ball would have sold that audiobook, which I bought, pre-ordered it, but if he also would have included a $100, NFT that would have had launch night, live stream, ask Matthew anything, and you bet I would have purchased it. So I think sometimes that our audience actually wants to invest more, but we're only like, I just have an ebook. I mean, think about it. Disney, monster trucks, WW, I don't know, we called it WWF. What is it? WWE now? I don't even know. But the point is that there's all these experiences where people want to walk away with the super fan. They want to walk away with the investment of the souvenir that they can tell their friends, look where I went. Well, you guess what? Your digital wallet is now that gallery where you can share with your friends. I was at the Ed Sheeran show with Taylor Swift when they sang this, and I mean there is that desire where you want that social currency. I mean, Blue check marks are there for a reason. It sounds ridiculous until you realize that people are investing tens of thousands of dollars to get one.
Yep. No, it is. And I think it'll set books apart. It'll give your digital book another chance. It's a better source of income, revenue, all those things. So tell me about your podcast.
Yeah. So I even though I did 500, I'll say it again. Even though I did 500 episodes of the Igniting Souls conference over 7 or 8 years, in December of 2021, I said, you know what? I'm going to kill it all. I really did. I said, I'm going to kill it all, and I'm going to do blockchain live. And so I'm actually big into um, killing off things, not people, but I am. I really am. Like, um, I'm killing my mastermind. Like, why? It's going great. It's lucrative because as a creator, I have to be doing new things. And some people are not comfortable with that. Some people are like, hey, listen, man, I want to go ride It's a Small World after all over and over again for the last, 50 years. That's not me. And I want to be like, hey, let's create the next thing. So I think people who follow me realize we're going on a crazy journey. I don't know the exact path where we're going, but we're going to have a ton of fun, and it's going to be innovative and creative and risky, and we're going to learn so much along the way. So I like that, and that's kind of who I hang with. I mean, look at U2, the band. There were people who dropped off following them when they went with their album Pop. And I'm talking like, wait, this dates me, but oh well. But I mean, there were people who said, "What? You two? No, like we shut up. We just want the old stuff." Look, there's you're not going to find things. You learn so much about yourself as an artist and a thought leader. I mean, look at me. Christian books I started with. Then I went into business. Then I went into self-help. Then I went into fiction. I mean, it's ridiculous. Wait till you see what comes next. But I feel like if I'm bored, my audience is
I
bored.
love it. Yeah. No, it's great. And it's counterintuitive somewhat, but it
Yeah.
fulfills you too. And it allows you to find more and more things.
It does. It does. Like if I'm not having fun, yeah, yeah. I mean, if I'm not having fun and if I'm singing the same song that I sang for 40 years, I'm not going to be enjoying it. And in a weird way, I don't know. You're bringing out crazy stuff in me today, but this is why Nirvana. This is why Kurt Cobain killed himself. Honestly, like he wasn't having fun anymore, and I feel like what, as artists, we better be modeling the way. And I'm not saying let's all commit suicide, but I'm saying like you gotta be having fun, and and I am having a ton of fun. And so my conference this year, wow, it's all Web3. And some people think I'm a nut because we killed the Author Academy Awards that we literally had as a success. But after 4 years of it, I was like, I can't just do it again. I'm not into it. And so it's Web3. We got Casper Labs. We have NFT artists. We have a metaverse architect from Spain coming. I mean, how crazy is that? Because I'm in the room learning and I want to grow.
Love it. I love it. So besides the podcast, we can send people to igniting souls.com. What's the best place to follow you on this journey?
Yeah, so I got like KaryOberbrunner.com. I encourage people, why not check out my fiction book, Elixir Project. It's about a future society, as I mentioned, where people's brains get hacked. It's fun. I mean, it's. Oh, so get this. People said for years, your model will never work with fiction. I mean, they said that. They said 18 streams of income. You can't do that with fiction. That will never work. And I felt like it was inauthentic to tell people on the webinar, trust me, it'll work. Trust me, it'll work. So finally, I'm like, you know what? In 2016, I said, I'm going to go make it work. And so we created 18 streams of income around elixirprojectbook.com. You can see them all there. There's a course, there's a keynote speech, there's a conference, there's a workshop immersion experience. We did it, and so I just feel like people Google things and then they get really dumb answers. Like if you go to Google and say, "Can I make money with fiction?" Google's going to tell you no. Well, go tell Harry Potterville, go tell Marvel Comics or whatever that fact. They're not going to care. So, stop taking cues from people who are spectators. I respect the person. I love that quote about what's that quote about
Man,
Roosevelt? I think he said
the man
it's
in the
the
arena.
person. Yeah, man in the
Yeah.
ring, right? Yeah, there you go. That's it. Yeah, like that person knows failure. I respect that person rather than the person who just is watching in the crowd.
I love it. I love it. So everyone make sure to follow Kary. He's got a lot of cool stuff going on. Get some ideas for NFTs for your book. I think everyone needs to be thinking about it for both marketing and making money off of it. But Kary, thank you so much for being on the Garlic Marketing Show.
I had a blast. Thanks for all you're doing, and thanks for taking risks. You're somebody worth following. And by the way, people, if you like his show, review it and rate it, because I'm a podcaster. We need that stuff. So thanks so much for having me today.
And yes, thank you. And this has been fun. It's something different. I think you've got to be different to stand out. Some of you, 1% of you will take this risk with NFTs. Make sure to understand that that's standing out is what's going to get you through the noise. But I really appreciate it, Kary. Thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you all for taking Kary and I on our journey. It's been Iron Garlic and the Garlic Marketing Show.